We're all like internal combustion engines. We are internal combustion engines. But instead of one big engine in the middle like your car, there are millions of them, the mitochondria out in the muscle cells. In the normal course, once the default to decay signal cuts in, you start losing mitochondria. The little engines shut down, and the capillaries get blocked off and die. When you do aerobic exercise, you grow millions of new little engines and miles of new capillaries. You're not going to be calendar younger, but as a practical matter, you're going to be a lot younger. You're going to be able to move because there's going to be more food and oxygen going to the little engines. You're going to be able to do more stuff. You know, I can do stuff that an awful lot of people my bodies don't even hear about.
Welcome to the Bucket Podcast. I'm David Aben, founder of The Bucket, and that man you just heard is Chris Crowley, author of the New York Times best-selling book, Younger Next Year. The book, which he co-wrote with Dr. Henry Lodge, has sold more than 2 million copies and is now part of a series of Younger Next Year books, which includes one for women, one for exercise, and one specifically for your back. Now, if you're thinking, like I was, that this is just another fad or mindfulness exercise, you're as wrong as I was. Instead, Chris and Henry revealed the science behind their premise and the concept that we all have the ability to control how our body ages. And we're about to find out more from Chris himself. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll hear about how our roots as an endurance predator have never gone away, and how the body reacts to cues that we give it to either grow or decay. In his first life, Chris was a Wall Street lawyer whose career highlights include successfully arguing a pro bono case before the Supreme Court. Chris retired early at 56 because he, quote, wanted to live more than one life. After retirement, Chris and his wife moved to Aspen, Colorado for 5 years, where she painted and he lived out his dream of being a ski bum and leading the vigorous outdoor life. During this period, he got the idea for what would become the Younger Next Year books. It is really a privilege to welcome Chris Crowley. Hello, Chris. Welcome to the Bucket Podcast.
Good to be here.
Thank you. And are you home on the slopes? Where are you? In the gym?
I'm down in New York City. We have an apartment in New York where you live some of the time, and a place up in Lakeville, Connecticut, up in the southern Berkshires the rest of the time.
That's great.
But I'm an old Boston guy. I grew up in Marblehead a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
Still a Red Sox fan, still a Patriots fan. Still sick about Tom Brady, the patty cakes last week.
Yeah, so am I. Well, I first learned about your book from people who heard I was doing The Bucket, and they said, you got to read this book. You got to read this book. And it's probably not a great way to start the podcast by saying that I was skeptical. People told me what it was. People told me what it was about, and I was saying, it sounds like a book about aging, and a kind of a pep talk about getting old. But enough people kept saying, you got to read this book, that I finally read it. And well, one of the things that really grabbed me was that line, you won't get old and die, you'll get old and live. And it was like my eyes were opened that this wasn't about aging, it was preventing aging. And that's a pretty bold claim.
That's a different story, and it's true. And it works.
Yeah, talk about the theory behind it.
Let's just take a quick minute, I guess, to sort of lay down the basic premise to get your folks oriented. Younger Next Year, written with my beloved friend who died young despite doing all the stuff we talk about, Harry Lodge. Is the basic premise is that behavioral change, especially exercise, but a couple of other things we'll talk about, behavioral change, as opposed to conventional medicine, can have a profound impact on your health and well-being. It can eliminate forever your susceptibility to 50% of the worst diseases and accidents. We're talking heart attacks and strokes and adult-onset diabetes and most cancers, and most recently, including Alzheimer's. You can reduce your susceptibility to Alzheimer's by more than half by doing this stuff. I should mention there's a new edition of Young Next Year that just came out a few days ago. It's the first revised edition. It's the 15th anniversary edition, and it's got a wonderful new section by a guy named Alan Hamilton. Alan is a professor of neuroscience and a brain surgeon in Arizona, and he is a smarty pants right up there with Harry Lodge. And the new chapter talks mostly about the mental and emotional side of our regime. And he says there's clear evidence now, and everybody agrees that doing this stuff can have a major impact on your intelligence effectiveness, your cognitive ability. You can be 10% smarter. Holy Toledo. I wish I'd had it when I was in law school. Anyhow, there's, in addition to eliminating, reducing your risk of those major diseases by half. And by the way, there's nothing vaguely like that in medicine. That's an extraordinary claim, and no one disagrees with it. The other big claim is that you can avoid 70% of normal American aging until you're close to the end of your life. How close? I don't know. I'll let you know. But so far, so good. But that's extraordinary. In a normal course, American aging is a slow, steady curve from 50 till death. Every year you're a little fatter, more pain racked, slower, less good company, less sexual, all kinds of awful stuff. And then you go with the waterfall. I got pals in their 80s these days, and most of them are not having fun. Most of them are what they call the frail elderly, and you don't want to go there. And the big news is you don't have to.
Yeah, so very quickly for people, the whole idea of the endurance predator, where the body is responding to what you tell it in terms of what you're doing, and the idea of growth and decay.
Let's start with this. The brain is an amazing gadget, the most amazing on Earth. 100 billion signals, devices to send signals out. And your body is getting zillions of signals all day long. Do this, do that. Every single cell getting constant signals. When you're young, the default signal is to grow, and no matter what, you get bigger, stronger, and so on and so forth. And then at some point, when you're in your early 30s, 32 and 32, the default signal flips over to decay, and then the decay process sets in. The basic premise of the book is that you can overcome that default signal to decay by sending some growth messages over the same signaling system. The best and really the only serious growth signal is serious exercise, both aerobic exercise, for reasons I'll talk about, and strength training, for reasons I'll talk about. Send those signals, and you can, instead of going that slow, steady decline, which is such a horror, you can be the same guy, same woman, more or less all the way out. That's the premise, and nobody disagrees.
Yeah, that idea of you talk about the messages you send your body. It's like for me, my experience when I have not been working out and I gain a few extra pounds is I've always noticed that when I start working out again, it takes me a while. It takes a while for my body to start losing the weight. And then I read what you had said about, the body is waiting to be convinced that you're serious about this. It kind of waits.
That's right.
It's
but it doesn't take that long, especially on the aerobic side. You can, if you've been a stranger at exercise either all your life or for, recent years, if you start with the aerobic side, you can get into it pretty fast. You want to do it pretty hard for you, but you're gonna get, it's gonna be fun starting in, a few weeks, and it'll be a little bit addictive starting in 6.
Yeah. So the idea that you have to work out now, a lot of self-help books are good at convincing people who already are inclined to follow the advice given. So,
right.
With you're saying it's 6 days a week of exercise.
Sounds horrible. Yeah, but it's true.
And so is that something that people can do? So are people going to say, I can't possibly do that and not even start? Or like, how do
everybody says I can't possibly do it, and of course you can. But it sounds daunting when I give public talks. You can sort of see people that see their butts shifting in their chairs. Like, what? 6 days a week? This guy's crazy. I'm going to get out of here. But by the end of the talk, they're persuaded, and by the end of the book, you're persuaded. The impact of steady, regular exercise, serious exercise, is so tremendous. It'd be a terrible idea not to do it. Think about it. We're all dying of heart attacks. Half of us die of heart attacks. It's horrendous. To reduce that by half, to reduce the risk of dementia by half, and there's no other way to do it. It's a miracle. That's what it is. And, of course, I beat the drum. I'm a popularizer, but I'm such a believer. And I'm not an athlete. I quickly say I never was, but I sure do this stuff. And by the way, an awful lot of people, thousands of them, have jumped in on this. Some of them athletes, most of them not, and changed their lives. We get mail all the time. Hey, man, thanks for writing that book. You changed my life. You saved my life.
I think that's one of the things, like when you're writing a book and people reading it, you don't see people reading it, but when people come up to you, it must be an amazing feeling to know that you helped somebody.
It's an astonishing thing. We wrote this first book came out 15 years ago. And I still, everywhere I go, last night we were at some event, and some guy, you wrote that book, blah, 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 you changed my life. I get it everywhere I go, because it's had an amazing impact. For some reason, it's sticky. It's hard to learn stuff from a book in a way, this kind of stuff anyway. But this has been sticky. And the voice is not scary. I'm not scary, and neither is Harry. But it's very compelling. Just the quality of life stuff. The idea that we're in control of our aging, from 30 on, big deal, man. It appeals more to sort of the executive and professional types. We've appealed to an awful lot of people. I gave a talk at the Bath Iron Works up in Maine to a bunch of foremen. They ate it up with a spoon. It's good for everybody, I tell you.
Yeah, you talk about the tone. I listened to the book on Audible, and the way you wrote it has a no bullshit tone to it. But the guy reading it takes it to another level in terms of listen, buddy, stop with the excuses. Let's do this. So did you play a role in the casting for that?
I tried out for it. They wouldn't just automatically have me do it. They said, "Nope, you talk too fast. We're not going to have you do it." And I'm a pretty good speaker. Somebody says I'm one of the 3 best speakers in the country. And I said, "I am a good speaker." He said, "No, not for books. You're out."
So I'm gonna.
I was hurt, man. I was hurt.
I'm gonna put you on stage for a second, and I'm gonna let's play a little game where I'm going to give you an excuse of why I can't do this, and you tell me why my excuse is bullshit. So my first excuse is I don't have enough time to do this.
Do this stuff, and you'll have more time. You'll be more effective, more decisive. You'll have more energy. Listen, I just got a letter from a guy who's the CEO of a huge Fortune 100 company. He's a true believer, and I've gotten to know him a little. But he started just reading the books. He told me at Christmas time he's read this one 16 times.
Oh, wow!
First time, And you think he's a busy guy? Yeah. And I've practiced serious law on Wall Street for a long time. This gives you more time. I know about being pressed for time. It's a question of priorities. Of course, you've got no time. You use up all the time. Yes, one way or another. This one's a priority: your job, your family, and exercise. It's as simple as that. And the older you get, the higher up the priority curve it goes.
All right, that's great. Okay, I have no money, Chris. It's like I can't join a gym. This is for elite. I can't do this.
I get a lot of that one, and there's a whisper of truth in it. I mean, it's easier to do this stuff if you can go to a gym or heaven help you hire a trainer, which is big money. But you don't need all that. You can do the exercise stuff without a gym membership, without any gadgets. You can do it just with your own body and a couple of very simple things. It doesn't have to be expensive. We talk about stuff in the book that sounds like this is a rich kid's game. I ski a lot. I'm going skiing for 3 weeks later this month. But, that's an expensive sport, but that doesn't matter. You can do all the fundamental exercise stuff without any of that.
Okay, well...
It makes a ton of sense to buy yourself a bicycle at some point, or whatever else you like to do, but we're not necessarily talking big dough.
All right, well, I can work with the time and I can figure out the money, but, Chris, it's too late for me. I am so overweight and... there's no way I can get into the kind of shape you're talking about.
I love that question because it's just so wrong. We've worked with a lot of people who were, some of them were old and some of them were fat as butter. There was a wonderful guy. We used to run retreats that people would come for 5 days. It was a lovely man from someplace in Texas. He was fat as butter and he was out of shape. And he was a good solid 60 or 70 pounds overweight, and he had a lovely spirit, and I liked him, and he liked the idea, but he was hard-pressed. I said, listen, and this is not a general offer, by the way. I said, listen, if you'll drop 60 pounds, I'll come down to Texas and take you to dinner. 6 months or a year later, he called and said, hey, listen, I'm ready for dinner. And I hear it all the time. There was a guy last night. I was at an event, meeting some people for some organization. And this guy, whom I'd never met before, was the head of the new organization. He said, oh, golly, I read that book. I lost 60 pounds. I hear it a lot. It's not primarily, we're not about weight loss. We're about fitness. But weight loss happens for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people who are fat as butter, too. I'm not talking 10 or 20 pounds. I'm talking 60, 80, 100. And it's worked for a bunch of them. Not all, I'm sure, but a bunch.
It worked for you, too, right? You started a little overweight, right?
Yeah. I got thinner, not as cute as I ought to be, but pretty cute.
So, you talked earlier about the mental aspect, and, I love the way the book went in terms of, it started a lot of physical stuff, and then it went to a lot of mental stuff about how to get past this and and kind of pushing yourself. And we have a theme coming up about failure and taking chances, and how failure can be a fuel. So it sounds like you think doing that scary stuff is important.
Well, I don't think we don't stress it in terms of scary stuff. We think that doing the stuff and going for it, doing stuff that you think is way beyond you and you're not that kind of woman or whatever it is, we think that's super important. We think that anybody from a master's athlete to a man or woman who's never done anything can benefit enormously from this. And getting past the notion you can't do it, it takes a while. I mean, there are some people I'm sure we're never going to reach, but we've reached a lot of them that thought, what?
So just the title of your book, Younger Next Year, is your body actually, it's not literally getting younger, but how is it getting younger in terms of why?
Well, just think about this. We say that you ought to do a lot of aerobics. 4 days of aerobics, 2 days of strength training. Aerobics is stuff for your circulatory system and so on. We're all like internal combustion engines. We are internal combustion engines. But instead of one big engine in the middle like your car, there are millions of them, the mitochondria out in the muscle cells. In the normal course, once the default to decay signal cuts in, you start losing mitochondria. The little engines shut down, and the capillaries get blocked off and die. When you do aerobic exercise, you grow millions of new little engines and miles of new capillaries. You're not going to be calendar younger, but as a practical matter, you're going to be a lot younger. You're going to be able to move because there's going to be more food and oxygen going to the little engines. We're designed to move. We were designed as endurance predators, We used to follow the big herds around, and they were faster than we were, and so on. They had better endurance. We had wonderful focus. If they'd get tired, we'd go over and hit them on the head and eat them. Funny way to make a living, but that's what we're built for, and we're still built for that. And as long as we exercise, our bodies function wonderfully well. When we don't, they get all buggered up. You reverse that trend.
So I can only work out 5 days a week, not 6. Does that mean all bets are off, that I'm not doing anything to help me, or?
Of course not. Anything is better than nothing. I keep hearing people, I garden a lot. For heaven's sakes. Good for you. Or I play golf, which I think is, golf is a wonderful social event, but it's not exercise. And I said, look, fine. Anything is better than nothing. But if you want to optimize your chances of having a good life, 6 days a week is about right. We spent some time, Harry and I, thinking about this, and mostly Harry, may I say, and that's a good bit of advice. Bear in mind, strength training is reversing a lot of natural tendencies to decline, a lot of them. The idea that you can put off muscle loss, coordination loss, bone loss, which normally goes along at the rate of 10% a decade. The idea you can halt that with just a couple of days of strengthening, holy Toledo, that's a miracle. And it's true.
So I'm going to shift gears a bit here and ask you some questions we ask all our podcast guests. And first one's easy. We have at the Bucket a thing called the Bucket Age. And the Bucket Age is your statistical life expectancy minus your current age. And so my statistical life expectancy is about 85. I'm 61, so my Bucket Age is 24. So what's your Bucket Age?
Gee whiz, I don't know. I'm 85. That's pretty exciting. So my Bucket Age, I'm going to die tomorrow, probably. I mean, who knows? But I'm awfully healthy. Usually if you haven't had heart disease or cancer by this stage, the likelihood is you're going to live to be, I don't know, a decade, say. But I don't know, and I haven't looked into it. So sorry, I can't give you that.
The idea is a little like you're not going to get old and die, you're going to get old and live. It's like this idea of how much time you have left. And, the purpose is to get people to pick their heads up and say, wow, this is how many years I have left on this planet. What am I going to do with them? We think a lot of people just kind of keep their heads down, and they wake up one day and they say, hey, this isn't fair. I'm dying and I didn't do all this stuff. So if you were on your deathbed tomorrow, would you have any regrets, things that you wish you had done?
I've thought about this. I don't have a bucket list. I've led a lovely life. I've done all kinds of stuff, some of it deeply responsible and a ton of fun. I'm good at pleasure. I've lived, I was a Wall Street lawyer for 25 years doing big trials. That's a lot of fun for a certain kind of guy, and at the very high end, too. I loved it. I argued in the American Supreme Court, a serious civil rights case. That's a great thing to do. And then I quit young, which is a recommend anybody who has any appetite for it. And because I wanted to live a second life, we went out and we're ski bums. My new wife and I, we've been married for 27 years now. We were ski bums for a few years, and then I started working on the book idea, and then writing this book. It came out when I was 70. I've led two pretty good lives, and I could, if I got nailed tomorrow, I'd be sick about it, but I wouldn't have a bucket list.
And nothing that you wish you had done, but you never got around to it.
I wish that I'd had the experience of being in the military for some reason. I think that's just because I grew up during World War II, and I think that's a different thing. I was married as a freshman at Harvard, so, I never did that. I was going to be in the ROTC for 3 years. But so, that's the only thing, a big chunk of life I didn't do. I also wish I wish I'd had a public life. I think that being involved in politics is almost a national duty, as dreadful as it is these days. I can see that too. But that one I'm going to miss.
It must be great with the book. I mean, it's been 15 years now, but just the ability to reach people that you don't know.
Absolutely.
In terms of, you used to be in the courtroom, right? It's like you were, and it was the group around you. It was all local.
Yep.
And now you're reaching people all over the world.
To me, it is such a true believer. I made a little dough doing this, but that didn't begin to be the point. I'm a true believer. I think it's nuts that we don't all do this. And the idea that we're changing a lot of people's lives, oh boy. The more, every time something like that happens, hey, I've made good use of my time. And my gifts, we all have our special gifts. Well, I can write and talk. And to spread this message, this is about as good a message as there is.
Do you think that there's a domino effect for people in a good way, in the sense that they start doing this and other things in their life start to change? Do you see that?
You bet. Once you start doing the exercise stuff, bear in mind what the stuff is emphasized in the new edition. You get more energy. More energy is, I think, almost the signal trait of successful people or people who achieve stuff. High energy is such a blessing. You get a ton more energy, you get more optimism, more decisiveness, more interest. You're more interested in what's going on just because you're growing all these new, your mind is getting stronger and you're getting smarter. So all kinds of stuff happens. You're just a more alert, more engaged person. You bet.
Is it contagious?
I don't know that. I think so a little bit. I mean, we've given these retreats, they were great fun. But, look at there are communities where people do stuff. You go to Colorado and everybody's on the move. You go to the West Coast, they're more likely to be on the move. In New York City here, we're surprisingly healthy because everybody walks every place. Not athletic, but anyhow. And I think there's something going on in the country. There's a lot more exercise. People are eating a little bit less garbage, which is just wonderful.
Yeah, it's definitely the part of that diet I was talking about.
I bet that Boston's a pretty healthy town too. I don't know, but I bet it is.
I don't know. I work in Boston, but I go in and I stay in the office and I get out and I usually go to the gym. So the gyms people are doing well.
If I lived in Boston, I'd bike, ski, and boat a lot myself.
Yeah. So what do you think people regret the most? Like, what do you see in people that they wish they were doing?
Well, this is unrelated to the book, but I think that one of the great tragedies in life is the failure to align what you do for a living with your gifts. I think if you can, as a kid, just figure out what you're good at, and then use that to your best ability. I think that happiness, to a great extent, is a matter of using your best gifts at the highest level. I was a banker for 3 years. I was a dreadful banker. I didn't like it. They didn't like me. I was no good at it. I've never been more wretched. Then I went to law school, which is not exactly an inspirational experience for a lot of people. I felt as if I were coming up from underwater because it was exactly what I was designed to do but however long it was. Doing what you're good at and using your gifts. I think there's nothing worse than not using your gifts.
So what do you define as living fully?
Well, the one I just said, there's one answer. But social involvement with others, being committed, being interested, getting outside yourself. We stress in the book that we're all mammals. We have this limbic or emotional brain, which, the reptiles don't have. And it enables us to live and work in families and herds and law firms. And we're better at that. We achieve stuff because of that. But we're designed for that. famous story. A guy has a heart attack, goes home to an empty house. He's 4 times as likely to have a second heart attack and die as a fellow who goes home to a family. A guy who goes home to a dog is twice as well off. We are limbic creatures. We need to snuggle up and be involved with others. That's important, especially the men who are more prone to loneliness in this country, especially in retirement. You got to find a way to stay involved with other people, and I think it's true all the way through life.
Do you have any final words of advice for our listeners?
Oh, gosh. Bear in mind, read the darn book. It's wonderful. It's fun to read. It's easy, and it may just grab you and change your life. The notion that you control your own life, I find that wonderfully encouraging. I know we're all going to die, and I hate that. Too bad. Especially me. It's going to be, as I say, it's going to be an hour and a half, something like that. But the idea that we control the quality of our life to the extent that we do, the idea that we can resist aging, which is pretty grim if you don't do something. You can avoid all that muscle loss and memory loss and mind loss and isolation and despair. It's a wonderful thing. And is 6 days a week a big workout? You bet. But it's a trifle for the return.
So you said your book just came out 2 days ago. How can people get it?
Oh, you go in any place. I was in what's the big bookstore in New York? Barnes and Noble. It's it's out on the public shelves. I mean, it's prominent, and you can get it on Amazon. You can get it every place. Let's do it. It's fun. It's fun. If you don't laugh, send me a note. I'll send you your money back.
Well, do you have any questions for me?
What do you do to work out? What do you do to stay in shape?
I do a lot of Stairmaster.
Really?
What I do is I
seldom get that answer.
I do. Well, the reason I do Stairmaster is because when I get on the elliptical, I can slow down if I want to. And the Stairmaster is at a pace. Obviously, I can control the pace, but when I put on a program or something, I have to keep up with it.
Right.
And so I'm trying to get ready for a winter hike of 4,000 footers in March. It's just a Appalachian Mountain Club Saturday trip and a Sunday trip, and no camping. And I've always wanted to winter hike and winter camp.
No snow caves, huh?
No. So
Good.
I'm trying to get ready for that. And I just had surgery on my elbow. I had a torn tendon. The surgery was in November, so I can't do any kind of circuit classes or anything like that yet.
Yeah. Try to get, if I may say so, read this book, and then there's a thing just you to think about. Younger Next Year, the exercise program. It's a little tiny book, but with wonderful detailed suggestions, especially on strength training. Strength training does different stuff for you, and you need to do that 2 days a week. Let me just hit it again. In the normal course, you're going to lose 10% of your muscle mass every decade. You're going to lose 10% of your bone mass every decade. You're going to lose balance, proprioception, and coordination. You can offset almost all of that with strength training. You may not like strength training. Too bad. Do it anyhow.
Yeah, I wish I could. I think I've got...
You can.
Well, I can't because of my elbow.
And use your other hand. Yes, the most important thing is your legs and your... People say, "Oh, listen, aging is all in your mind." I said, "No, it's your quads and your glutes, man. Strengthen your legs." Listen, 2 years ago, my wife and I were walking across the street. I was wheeling my bicycle, but I wasn't riding it. And we looked both ways. It was a wide open street. And I'm looking left, and she's looking right. All of a sudden, over the hill comes this woman who had to have been on her cell phone and smacks me at 35 miles an hour on the hip, on the side, to be sure. Not, dead on. I'd have been killed. But I thought I'd been shot. And when they got me to the hospital, they warmed up the helicopter because clearly there'd be organ injuries and God knows what all, because I was 83 years old or whatever. And they took a bunch of x-rays and the CAT scan, and I had to have a blood transfusion because I had this huge bruise. And then they did the CAT scan and the thing again because they couldn't believe it. There were no bones. There were no broken. I was back on my bike in 2 weeks. And the reason was because I have strong glutes. I was back on my bike in 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
It matters. Yeah, it's a good story and a true one.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to talk about?
Talk about food for a second. As I say, I tend to urge people not to worry as much about losing pounds. It's a wonderful idea to lose pounds, but it's so hard and we get disappointed and blah, 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 blah. I think that, being healthy overall, I have a daughter who's, she's our age, she's 60-something, and she's a little bit overweight, but she's become a bit of a swimmer. In fact, she's become a hell of a swimmer. She swims in San Francisco Bay, and she got into distance cold water swimming. She's a little overweight, but she has swum the English Channel. She has swum around Manhattan Island in her 50s and 60s. I mean, wow. And is she fit? You bet. I would worry less about that and more about fitness. If you're fit, you're going to feel terrific. You're going to be healthy. You're going to be able to do stuff. We're designed to move, and if we don't move, we're pushed out of the herd, and we're not ourselves. It's a very important step. You got to be yourself all the way out.
Yeah, I love what you say about eating in the book. About just, it's not very technical. It's like, stop eating crap.
Stop eating crap. It's one of our rules. And people say, well, what's crap? I say, you know what crap is. Actually, of course, people don't, but it is very simple, by the way. This is not my formulation, but another Loa did write a book about it with a wonderful professor from Tufts, Jennifer Sajik, terrific woman, all-American rower, all kinds of stuff. But anyway, smart about nutrition, obviously. And the basic notion is it makes a ton of sense to eat a little bit less as you get older because your metabolism changes. Have a ton of vegetables and fruit. Eat fish and meat, especially lean meat. Take it easy on the red meat and eat less. But the big one is don't eat prepared foods. All the stuff in the middle of the grocery has added sugar and fat, and it's not good for you. Here's a wonderful number for your folks to focus on. 35% of the American diet is added sugar and fat that is pumped into prepared foods. All the stuff in the middle of the supermarket, all those frozen dinners and so on and so forth, some better than others, obviously. But in general, stay out of the middle. Stick to the edges. Just get the fruit and veg. Get the meat and the fish. And get the hell out.
Yeah, I love how practical that is.
That's easy, you know.
It's not complicated.
And I want to avoid if you're gonna, people say we got to quit eating carbs. Well, you can't do that. Carbs are everywhere. But the bad carbs, the refined carbs, I'm talking white rice, French fries, pasta, which I adore, and bread, white bread. You know, if you can stay away from those puppies, it's a great idea. And if you're fat, you know, it's dangerous. You know, that tummy tum-tum, that beer belly or whatever, people used to kind of pat and feel affectionate toward. Don't do that. That sucker is dangerous. You think of fat as being neutral or whatever. It's not neutral. It's a huge source of inflammation. Inflammation is what makes you sick. Inflammation is what kills you. And we've got a big bucket of inflammation coming out of that gut right down near a bunch of organs. I used to say in one of the books, I said, it's a gut like that is an open sewer in your body, and at night the rats come out. And it's true. It's true.
Well, this has been great, Chris. I really appreciate your time. And
well, I'm glad to talk to you. It was fun. I hope we've changed some lives. We'll see.
I think we will. Thank you very much.
Good. You're most welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, bye. I don't know about you, but I'm a believer. Like I said before, I was a true skeptic. I thought this was going to be one of those soft mindfulness types of philosophies, but it's anything but that. I know for me that when I commit to working out, I feel better. My body feels better, and I'm still not doing it 6 days a week, but I'm doing enough to feel younger. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you get something out of it, and by all means, go out and get this book. To learn more about how to get the most out of your life by embracing your own mortality, go to thebucket.com. That's thebucket, all one word, .com. And if you know someone you think should be on a future Bucket podcast, let us know at bucketfeedback@thebucket.com.